Welcome back. Now, the passing of the Cannabis for Private Purpose Bill by the National Council of Provinces is said to be a stepping stone for bigger issues. And as the bill awaits the signature of the president to be passed into law, many in the field are hoping for a fresh directive on the trade of the ancient plant. Well, Fields of Green for All's Managing Director Myrtle Clarke joins us for more. Myrtle, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you say that the most important part of this bill moving to this stage is actually taking cannabis out of the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act, but also doesn't allow for trade, and there are no amounts available yet. So in simple terms, what does this mean for traders as well as consumers?
Well, that's a very good question, and thank you for having me on your show. It means that trade still remains illegal. Which is very unfortunate, but one always has to look at trade as a double-edged sword, because if we had to overnight legalize the trade in cannabis, there's always the danger that the large multinational companies and the people with lots of money are going to come in and swamp our industry. Without any thought being given to our rural farmers, our quasi-economic urban traders, our sneemen, as we call them. Fields of Green for All has always had the... can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Myrtle. Go ahead.
So Fields of Green for All has always had the interests of the guy who sells the matchbox on the corner. Because if we're to build the sunrise sector, we cannot use a vertically integrated approach. We have to look at our 700 years worth of cultivation, use and trade in this plant, and we have to look at the economic dynamics so that we don't leave anybody behind. So in a way, it's not so bad that full legalization hasn't happened yet, because around the world there's been various things tried and not much has really helped our legacy cannabis trade industry. So to get it out of the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act is a very, very good step. But one of the things that we are very concerned about is the continued raids on our, what we call our Dagga private clubs. And we are actually going to court in 2 weeks' time in Bloemfontein at the Supreme Court of Appeal to get some clarity about these private clubs, because according to the Constitutional Court judgment, and if you had to read it in legal terms, we should be able to have private clubs. And that would be a very good way of introducing the idea of legal trade in a very controlled way.
Look, Myrtle, COSATU has also welcomed the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill, right? Quite significant in that this also represents new employment opportunities in the wake of crippling unemployment rates in the country. Now, talk to us about the different types of work opportunities that both farmers as well as distributors can benefit from. And we also understand the process of acquiring a license is not that simple. Maybe talk to us through that aspect as well.
Well, yes, and thank you to my friends at COSATU. You know, we've been quietly working together in the background because, you know, of course, we also have a case in front of the Labour Court of Appeal, because it's all very well saying that cannabis is going to provide so many work opportunities, but then why are people still losing their jobs for using cannabis in their private time, in their private space, and then they go to work and they have these unconstitutional drug tests, and they lose that very employment that they need to feed their families, particularly people on the mines. So when one mustn't forget that, and one mustn't make promises that we can't keep. Now, at the moment, there's only very limited employment opportunities, because there's around about somewhere between 50 and 100 facilities that are supposedly producing medical cannabis for export. But I have it on good authority that only maybe 5 or 6 of these facilities are actually fully functional. So I should imagine that if we have 200 people employed within the formal cannabis sector at the moment, that would be a lot. So we've got a long way to go, and that is why we are encouraging the formation of these private clubs, because that would be a very controlled way of offering employment to people, because clubs are community-based organizations. They can be in any place from an informal settlement to a very fancy shopping center, and each one of these clubs needs staff, and each one of the suppliers of those clubs needs staff. But at the moment, there is no supply chain for the adult use of cannabis. There is no industrial cannabis or hemp industry in South Africa yet. There is a very limited medical cannabis industry, but as you say, the barriers to entry for the medical cannabis industry are not about the South African cannabis community. That's about business and medicine and producing something that makes a claim.
Absolutely.
It'll make a claim, you know?
Yes, Myrtle, look, I mean, talking about medicine, when it comes to industries like your pharmaceuticals, we've seen a boom in skincare products, wellness, oils and others. What are some of the benefits associated with marijuana products? Because I think people don't usually think far beyond the smoking it part, and it still remains largely taboo, as you've just said. But how lucrative is the industry, especially if these above mentioned practices? There has been a flurry of startups that use marijuana in their base products. So how are retail as well as pharmaceutical bodies then responding to the total legalization and trade?
Well, it is that's why we call it the sunrise industry, because it has such phenomenal potential. We always divide up the use of cannabis into 4 separate sections. So we have the adult use. That is for people over 18 years of old to use as they see fit. Then we have the industrial uses, the uses for health, and then obviously the traditional, cultural, and religious uses of the plant. So those are the 4 different ways that you can use it. But within the health uses, within the adult uses, we can make everything from edibles to, as you say, creams, cosmetics, plastics, fibers, fuels. We have had 700 years of traditional use, and we do believe that traditional healers are free to dispense cannabis in small amounts. But what will happen with the police and the traditional healers, I don't know. But we always say that the economic benefit is not restricted to those people who actually touch the plant, who actually make the products. We also need to look at the support industries. If you just take a simple cosmetic product and you think of everything that goes into that, what about the packaging? What about the retail space and the transportation? The accountant who does the books for your cannabis business is also a support industry.
All right.
So it's not only about touching the plant, it's about everything that goes with it, and this is the amazing potential.
Myrtle, thank you so much for your contribution. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and I think if you've actually noticed with our poll question today, a lot of people are saying if the sector is wholly formalized, then it could do great wonders for, of course, contribution to the GDP, as well as benefiting those farmers as well as users. Thank you so much. That was Myrtle Clarke there, Managing Director of Fields of Green for All.